Hi, as Julie said, I'm Cindy Hoffman. John is my Uncle John, and I'm up here delivering my dad, Bob Hoffman's remarks. So it's with great regret that I'm not able to attend the retirement party for John due to health reasons and my inability to travel. Fortunately, my wife Barbara and I are well represented here by our children, Cindy and David. I tried to put together a photo show for the years growing up with John, but discovered he had all the photo albums. So there's nothing available to embarrass him. Pretty smart guy. I would like to make one thing very clear. He is much older than me. Yet I retired about 12 years ago from NASA. Does this mean that I'm smarter than him, or vice versa? I'm not sure. All along, I have followed in his footsteps, starting with playing in the Winona High School band when we were respectively in 6th grade. There was tough competition for a spot in that band. If you could hold an instrument, you were in. A friend of mine recently pointed out a remarkable achievement at the corner of West Broadway in Winona, where we grew up. Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. Where is Winona? Has anyone ever heard of it except from John? Raise your hand. A couple of hands. Well, it's an old river town along the Mississippi in southeast Minnesota. Among other things, the town probably holds the record for the number of PhDs from one intersection. 4 at West Broadway. It started with our father, who earned a PhD from the University of Chicago with a major in chemistry and a minor in physics. He built our home there at 1252. John followed, and I followed John. A few years later, a friend of mine who grew up across the street at 1251 West Broadway completed the quartet with a PhD from Indiana, and we all went into the space game. I recounted this next story at John's 80th birthday party, but it's worth repeating to this somewhat different audience. John almost did not go into physics, which we would all have regretted. He had a serious interest in music, to be a high school band director. Our college, St. Mary's, didn't have a music program, so John wrangled his way, and as I talked to him this morning, he said really had to wrangle his way into St. Teresa's, a sister college in Winona, to take some music courses. Upon graduation, he still had not decided whether to go into physics or music, so he got a teaching assistantship in physics at the University of Iowa, which had a good music program. While there, he decided that high school band directors did not have the most glamorous of jobs. So he transferred up to Minnesota. So the country and the world narrowly missed losing a scientist with remarkable talents. It was back at Minnesota that John met his future wife, Judy, and had the wonderful and talented family that you see here today. But interest in music never left him. He took lessons on the oboe and clarinet from members of the Minnesota Symphony and got a job one summer with the semi-professional Pops Orchestra in St. Paul. And he satisfied his passion to be a band director by volunteering to lead the bands in the schools his children attended. As I said, I followed John every step of the way, except for his passion for music. Could anybody be so lucky? For nostalgic reasons, I would like to throw out some names. Most of them you probably won't know, but will bring back memories for John. John, you can chime in if you wish. Harold Edstrom.
Oh yeah, he was the high school band director.
Helen's Hepcats.
Well, my mother's name was Helen, and we had a group that she brought other kids that played instruments, and we practiced in the living room of our house. We had a piano there. We were known as Helen's Hepcats.
Mortimer.
Oh, that was my car.
I wondered why Mortimer didn't have a last name. Mrs. Smith.
Oh, that was the tea room in Minneapolis. it kept me alive for all the years I spent at the University of Minnesota.
Ellie Neer.
I'm sorry?
Ellie Neer.
Al Neer?
Or Al Neer, sorry.
Al Neer, yeah. He was the head of the physics department. He was my mentor at the University of Minnesota and became a very good friend, actually. And I guess it was because of Al Neer that I made it all the way through the physics department and got my doctor's degree in physics.
Nice.
He was a great mentor and has been a friend all his life.
Charlie Johnson.
Charlie, oh yes. Charlie was at the Naval Research Lab. He was my boss at the Naval Research Lab. And we fought an awful lot, in a sense. I say that in a good sense. I was very ambitious. I was very young. And he was, I don't know how many years older, somewhat older. And I think, I'm not sure, and I have to be careful how I say this, that he tried to put a little bit of a damper on many of the ideas I had. I'm not sure exactly why, but I managed to survive it, and we got along very, very well, but he was my boss for many years at NRL, and God rest his soul. I don't know if he's still alive, probably not. He was somewhat older than that. But anyway, yeah, that's it.
Julian Holmes.
Oh, yeah, Julian Holmes. He was a fellow colleague, student, member of Julian. Julian and I did many projects together, and he was a great guy.
The Kilstoffs.
Oh, they were a family of 5 kids that lived at the other end of the block. It's a long block in Winona. We lived at one end and they lived at the other end. The father of the family was a house contractor. Of course, he built his family a beautiful house at the other end of the block. It was about a block and a half long and everyone across the street. They had 5 kids. Lois was quite a bit older than I was. I never really knew Lois. She was in high school. She was in college and all that. I never knew the oldest girl. Carol was one of my best friends. She was probably 3 years older than me. And Irwin was the next one. And then Miriam was the next one. And Lauren was the next one. They were the next door neighbors, and then the other end of the block, the kids that I grew up with, basically.
Leland Smith.
Oh yeah, Leland. He came along a little bit later. I was in high school, and we did a lot of photography together. We were photo buddies for years. We spent a lot of time in the darkroom together, making prints and making pictures, and going out taking pictures. That was a great association.
Nice. And Winona Republican Herald.
Oh, the local newspaper. And I worked for the paper, I guess 1 or 2 summers, and I worked in what's called the circulation department. And what the job there you did is you wrapped newspapers in bags and put them in bigger bags so they could be delivered to all of the neighboring communities around the town. But I was very much interested in photography and kept bugging it. It was fairly small paper. They had 1 photographer, and that was the photography department for the newspaper. So I kept bugging him and says, I'm interested in photography. I've got a camera, and could I help you a little bit? And he said, well, okay. He gave me a speed graphic camera and says, go out, take a bunch of pictures some afternoon and process them, and let's see how you can do. So apparently I passed the test, and then so I was sort of taken on as his assistant. Well, in the summer then, he wanted to take a vacation. And he said, okay. I said, well, okay, I think I can manage it. It was a small town paper. And so he said, well, good luck. He says, all you're going to do is take pictures of old women and little babies. I said, well, thanks, okay. Well, that weekend, a Northwest Airlines plane was hit by lightning and crashed in the hills right outside of town. Unfortunately, all 27 people on board were killed. They were in small airplanes in those days, way back in the 50s or 40s, I forgot, 50s, I guess. And so, I mean, it was a major accident. Well, it turns out, of course, the photographers from Minneapolis and Chicago and all, they came and took pictures of everything, but then they all left. Well, then here was me and the local paper. And so I was hired by the FAA to take pictures of the crash site and all the parts of the airplane. And I had a friend of mine, his name was Dick to help me make hundreds and hundreds of prints of the pictures I took. They had me take pictures of those broken pieces of metal and twisted pieces of metal of the airplane. They're trying to pitch together what happened to the airplane and knocked out of the sky. And, you know, of course, everybody on board was killed, unfortunately. But it was quite an experience, and I had to make hundreds and hundreds of prints to, you know, satisfy all their needs. And I got, Dick was the guy's name that helped me. I paid him. They paid me, so I paid Dick for helping me. So he was happy, I was happy. So it was quite an experience. I ended up buying a press camera with all the money I made on that, and spent a lot of time in photography after that.
The many sides of my Uncle John. With that, I express my gratitude and admiration to you for being the big brother that you have been from 1252 West Broadway, and wish you a happy and healthy retirement with love.
Thank you.